Welcome to Small Biz Flash, the briefing for owners and managers on small business news, trends, and insights to make better decisions and increase their business's value. I'm your host, Adam Hewitt. Thanks for joining me. Just a reminder before we get to this week's topic, I'll be co-hosting a learning and networking event called Illuminate 2023 on Tuesday, February 7th in the perimeter area of Metro Atlanta. And I would love for you to join me and the other small business specialists that are going to be there. For more information, go to the link in the show notes. Okay, so this week we have the second part of the interview with special guest Jonathan Bill, owner of SBS Accounting Advisors, the show's sponsor, to discuss the vitally important topic of cash flow. That's coming up right after the news roundup. All right, let's dive in. Small business owners are more upbeat now than in mid-2022 about inflation, staffing issues, and a possible recession, according to a new poll from IOU Financial. Fueling the optimism, 64% reported that their businesses performed better than expected in the second half of 2022. 85% rate the current state of their business as positive or very positive, and 61% will definitely invest in their business in the first half of 2023. Small businesses have fueled all of the net job growth since the beginning of COVID, according to a review of data by the Wall Street Journal and analysis by investment banking firm Jefferies. Smaller companies, defined as those with under 250 employees for the report, have hired 3.67 million people since February 2020, while larger companies have cut their workforces by a total of 800,000 during the same period. Small businesses were responsible for 78% of the U.S. job listings in November. The Small Business Deduction, part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 passed by Congress, empowers pass-throughs, sole proprietorships, partnerships, S-corporations, and LLCs that account for the vast majority of small businesses to deduct up to 20% of their business income on their tax returns. But the small business deduction is set to expire in 2025, making it difficult for small business owners to plan ahead. The National Federation of Independent Business is pushing for the small business deduction to be made permanent, and just published an op-ed in the Washington Times on the issue. You can find a link to the piece, as well as find more information on the other stories in the news roundup, by going to the links in the show notes. Small business owners, your finances are the cornerstone of your business. You need the bookkeeping pros at SBS Accounting Advisors to keep your AP, AR, and financial statements on track. For 16 years, the good folks at SBS have been helping owners like you make better decisions and grow their profits. So go to sbsaccountants.com today to set up a free 30-minute consultation. Use the promo code FLASH to get 20% off your setup fee. Again, that's sbsaccountants.com. This week, we're continuing with the second part of my interview with Jonathan Bill, owner of SBS Accounting Advisors. So let's jump back in. Jonathan, can you tell our listeners when we're talking about how much cash a business should have on hand? Is there a particular recommendation for what they should keep in the bank at all times, just sort of a bare minimum?
Yeah, a lot of experts recommend 3 to 6 months of operating expenses. And so this is, essentially you're taking everything it would take to currently operate your company, payroll, all your overhead costs, all your indirect expenses, all your rent, all insurances, all that. You would just calculate that, and then you would have that times, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the bank account. And once again, kind of like we were talking about earlier, this enables you to be able to, think strategically if there were to be a downturn. So you might say, well, I don't have that amount of cash, just sitting around as a small business owner. So what I would really recommend that you do is, commit to setting aside a certain amount or percent each month of your cash and transfer it into like a money market account. And you can set up automatic transfers. And so you'll be surprised over time if you do that, how much that grows. And so that's what I would recommend if you don't currently have 3 to 6 months in operating expenses.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And also to that point that, there are some businesses that are seasonal. And so there may be certain times of year where you need more or less. And, there's some industries where maybe it varies a little bit. So, if people have specific questions about their particular industry or business, of course, you could answer those specifically. Okay, so let's say, that a company maybe meets that minimum, and hopefully that would be, that's the baseline. But as far as a line of credit, if there were bigger issues, if the economy went, worse even than we think, or, if there were other needs that the company had, talk to us about lines of credit. And do you recommend those? I think the answer is yes, but if so, what would be the reasons why you would say that is something that companies need?
Yes. Well, it is very important that a business be very careful with debt. And so you do want to very much watch that. And if you know you would be prone to using that line of credit irresponsibly, then I would probably recommend against it. But sure. if you can see it just as something for an emergency that you would use only in a very, very bad situation, then I think it is wise to have it. And then, of course, especially if you don't have that 3 to 6 months, but it can be helpful to layer it in. Like you were saying, if there were to, be a prolonged downturn in the economy. So yes, it is definitely something that I would recommend.
It's one of those things where if you get into a real squeeze, you're much less likely at that point to be approved for a line of credit by a lender. So it's good to get all your ducks in a row when you really don't need it, as opposed to when you do. I can really appreciate what you say about, if you're prone to sort of just go in and dip into those funds and do things with them that might be irresponsible or dangerous, then maybe you're just better off not having it. So that's really sage advice. Let's assume that a business is ready to get a line of credit. They think that is a wise thing to do. What is the next step as far as getting their books prepared or in order? What are kind of the things that they need to do before they would be, to go to a bank or any other kind of lender that would set them up for an LOC? What would they need to be ready to do?
Well, so many small businesses, they keep their books more on a tax basis. They're focused on, hey, how can I pay as little taxes as possible? And while there's some merit to that, I think when they go to apply for an SBA loan or LOC, that it can look as if their business is not very viable because they have done all they can in, say, December of the year to bring that net profit for the year down to close to zero. Well, when your banker looks at that, they don't know exactly why you did that. All they know is what they see. And so I would say that it's important to make sure that you're also thinking about, how do my financials look if I need to get lending? I would also say having financials is so important, and having them, kept by an accountant who knows what they're doing, who's keeping them up to date timely, is so important. And that way, when you go to apply for that loan, it's not a scramble. We have actually an SBA lender who has reached out to us multiple times on behalf of his client, saying, hey, you need to talk to them because They came to me for lending, but they don't have books that are up to date or clean. And so I would highly recommend that you engage with a quality accountant and bookkeeper who can keep those things up to date, but also who knows the metrics that you should be looking at. So it's not just record keeping, right? But it's looking at what is a good net profit margin for my business compared to other businesses? What is a good gross profit margin? What does my current ratio look like? And so on and so forth. So looking at those metrics that are important.
Absolutely. And that is a reason that this is the kind of thing that, small business owners don't need to leave to themselves. They need expert help. And I would highly recommend that all my listeners give Jonathan a call. Jonathan, thank you so much for your insight and your expertise. We really appreciate having you on the show today.
Yes, sir. Well, my privilege, and thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to have Jonathan's information in the show notes, his LinkedIn profile and his email and all that. So please reach out to Jonathan, and we'll see you next time on the show. Thanks so much. Thanks for listening to Small Biz Flash. I'm your host, Adam Hewitt. If you enjoy the show, please help me to expand its reach by telling one other person about the podcast. I sure do appreciate it, and I'll see you next week.